The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. An interesting new wrinkle in the fired Google engineer James Damore story. If you've forgotten about this guy, I don't blame you. But this is the guy who was fired from Google after a long memo or letter, I don't even know what to call it, criticizing Google's diversity policy, went viral. He was fired by Google. We interviewed him, some of the other players in the internet talk world.
Dave Rubin,
Joe Rogan interviewed him. And now he is suing. He filed a class action lawsuit yesterday against Google saying that they discriminate against white male conservatives. Okay. I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. I don't know if the idea is to actually win this lawsuit or merely to make a point or to try to get Google to give him some kind of settlement to make him go away. But this is a toxic movement. I've talked about it before. I don't even know what I would call this movement because there's no, if I call it one thing, people will write in saying that's not a fair characterization, but it's a movement that has overlap with the alt-right movement, the so-called men's rights movement, the anti-social justice warrior movement, the free speech absolutist movement, right? There's all these different movements that exist mostly in enclaves of the internet, all of which kind of have overlap. And honestly, the natural conclusion of a lot of those movements is a lawsuit against the company for discriminating against white male conservatives. It actually, it's not at all shocking that we saw a lawsuit like this.
I do wonder if he has a case, though, because on the one hand, a majority of the workers at Google are white and a majority are male. But on the other hand, both your gender and your race and color are protected statuses.
Sure.
Conservatives not. But do you think that they could rule in Google's favor or James Damore's favor based on some of that stuff?
Well, so what you're saying is interesting, but so think about what you're saying. If indeed most of Google's staff is white
on the
and
one
male
hand.
on the one hand, then that kind of deflates the argument that they discriminate against white men. That's number one. Then you have this issue, which he talked about on the show, where he said that there's a sort of blacklist. And when I asked him, well, how does the blacklist work? How is it communicated? How does it all work? He had no answers whatsoever, but he claims that there's this tech world blacklist for conservatives.
So he heard about,
but couldn't give us any information. And the issue there is that political orientation is not a protected class. So that's why I feel that the lawsuit is not going to go anywhere, because on the white male part, Google is disproportionately made up of well, I don't know about disproportionately. They might actually have overrepresentation relative to the population of some other groups. Like I know that a lot of Asian and Indian engineers are hired by Google.
Certainly disproportionately male, but maybe not white.
Maybe not white. But the idea that they're discriminating is going to be very, very hard to prove. And then again, even if they do quote discriminate against conservatives, that's not a protected class. So I don't know what the lawsuit would necessarily be over. So to me, this feels more like a publicity stunt than anything else.
Reminds me of that PragerU lawsuit against Google and YouTube, where they think that conservatives in particular are being targeted for demonetization.
Oh, right.
And the counter argument to that is shows like ours, shows like Secular Talk and all of these other channels that are also getting demonetized.
Although either argument is anecdotal. Really, we would have to see, more broadly speaking, was there a political bent in how news and politics was affected? And the other thing you have to consider, if 60% of the news and politics channels that were demonetized are conservative, that's not evidence of discrimination, because what if 60% of news and politics channels are conservative? Then you would assume that if there is even demonetization of left and right, you would see more conservative channels demonetized because there might be more of them. Anyway, that goes kind of to the base rate fallacy that exists when people like to make those claims. But we'll see, you know. Best of luck to James Damore, I guess, although I don't even know why I'm saying that, because I think it's a bogus lawsuit. But I don't know. We'll see what happens.
There's actually this interesting thing about him having autism, which he's open about.
Yeah.
And so that may inhibit his ability to communicate effectively with people. So when he said, one of the things that are pointed out in the document, that manifesto, was him labeling women as neurotic in general. And he probably meant that to mean maybe with more anxiety or greater sensibilities towards different things.
I think that's what he said during the interview. He said that women are more prone to work-related anxiety or something.
But like the colloquial understanding of that word means crazy, right? And that's how the public interpreted that.
Maybe
so. It could relate to that mental disorder or disability that he has in some way.
Is autism called a disorder
I don't know.
or disability? I don't know. Yeah, the condition of autism. Yeah. We'll call it that. Yeah. After the interview, there was a bunch of people emailed me and they said, David, James Damore has said that he's autistic. Is that surprising to you? And I said, no, it explains a lot. It's not making fun of the guy. It actually explains a lot about why he was interacting with me the way that he was.
I just wonder if it affects whether or not his firing was justified.
Oh.
Or if he has any standing in this case that he's bringing up.
Interestingly, he's not arguing that autism was a factor in the firing, but that's an interesting question. Yesterday, a federal judge dismissed criminal charges against, remember that Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy, who had the armed standoff with the Bureau of Land Management? The case against him was dismissed, and this is yet another defeat by 4 government officials who have been prosecuting Bundy. It's crazy to say it, Pat, but more or less, he's kind of won this thing. He had an armed standoff for, I think it was months, weeks, if not months, with Bureau of Land Management people. He's been a tax scofflaw for a very long time, and most of the cases against him have completely fallen apart. I guess this guy is the new conservative hero of some kind.
Well, I mean, it was only on technical grounds because the prosecution withheld evidence.
Yes.
Like, they guess they had like surveillance footage and some snipers around the facility there.
Yeah.
And they didn't disclose what they should have to the defense in order for him to make a reasonable argument defending himself.
You've got to share with them.
And yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate when these things fall apart on technical grounds because it doesn't seem just, does it? But that's the rule of law that we have.
It doesn't seem like justice, but I understand the need for specific parameters for how we are going to carry forward the process of justice, because without them, then people can be taken advantage of and discriminated against. And even with these narrow rules of evidence and everything else, you still see people taken advantage of by the justice system.
I wonder what he'll do now that he's a free man. Maybe something else like this. Maybe something like what his son did, Eamon Bundy, and taking over that reserve.
Sure, why not? Nothing better than taking over a nature preserve on a crisp winter morning in Nevada or wherever it is that he lives.
I mean, I wanted to see if Donald Trump was going to pardon him, you know?
Oh, yeah.
If the guy was convicted, because Trump once said that he was
a hero?
A tough cookie or something along those lines, and that he should have just cut a great deal with the federal government, and that would have been great.
It's funny because Trump likes to pretend that he's in some way similar to people like Cliven Bundy and Joe Arpaio or whoever. Trump grew up in Queens and Manhattan, and he has nothing in common with people like Cliven Bundy at all. He couldn't be further from someone like Cliven Bundy, but he's created the optics of being like a lot of these people who support him.
Oh, yeah.
In a way, it's the most nuanced thing Trump has done, which is foster this image of being like those folks when, in fact, he's nothing like those folks.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very steady moral character, stands up for what he believes in, and steadfast in his views.
All right, I guess we have to talk about Oprah, right? I've been saying I don't really want to talk about 2020 until we get past the 2018 elections, but there's a lot of talk about Oprah Winfrey possibly running for president, and immediately this has polarized a lot of my left-wing friends, some who are saying, listen, if Oprah runs, Oprah wins, and others saying, Oprah, please don't run. It would be an absolute and total disaster. I know I'm going to anger some people in our audience with this. I don't think Oprah should run. I think that I get the appeal of going with a celebrity candidate to match what took place on the Republican side. But remember, I'm not saying Trump is like Oprah. Trump would never have won a Democratic primary. So my only point is, don't assume that because something worked on the Republican side, that it's a good idea on the Democratic side. And I'm against Oprah running.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know what Oprah's politics are, but let's say, liberal, for the sake of argument, that they match with Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren.
Okay.
And neither of those two aforementioned potential candidates decide to run.
Sure.
In that scenario, would you favor Oprah Winfrey over the competitors if they're establishment Democrats?
I don't know who else there is, right? So if you're asking me if it came down to it, are there circumstances where I'd vote for Oprah over someone else? Yes, there are. I'm not saying that there aren't. I am more generally saying I want to get away from this attraction that now exists because of what happened with Trump to the exploration of more and more celebrity-type candidates.
Yeah, could you imagine being told back in like the 1990s that the 2020 matchup would be
Trump
Donald Trump
versus
Oprah Winfrey?
Yeah.
You'd think that I was insane, right?
Of course, of course. So if you're going to email me and say, David, here are reasons why it would be good for Oprah to run based on either her political positions or identity, I'm going to probably agree with you. I am just very, very cautious about doing anything that approximates what it is that happened in the Republican Party with Trump in 2016. And that's what scares me about it.
I mean, since you brought up identity, it would be interesting because I wouldn't be surprised if Democrats go in the direction of running another woman in 2020.
Maybe.
Become the first female president. And also, if you take a look at Oprah Winfrey's backstory, I mean, she was abused as a child.
Yep.
She is a self-made billionaire, which Trump is not.
Correct.
I mean, she would have some advantages in that race.
There's no question about it. There is no question about it. But right now, I'm not saying I wouldn't vote for her. I'm just saying, and this is going to be the limited amount I'm going to talk about 2020 for the next 10 months. I'm going to focus on 2018. Yeah. My instinct is to lean against the idea of an Oprah candidacy. If you disagree with me, just write to me. That's fine.
This whole talk stems from her giving a great performance, a great speech at the Golden Globe Awards.
That's right. I actually happened to see it. I never watched those shows, but my girlfriend was watching the Golden Globes, and I was making a snack in the kitchen.
Was it good?
And the snack was great. The speech was okay. And I was just rolling my eyes because I just hate the Golden Globes. It had nothing to do with Oprah's speech specifically. It's just the pomp and circumstance of those
Oprah is a very effective speaker, though, I gotta say.
Absolutely. She actually was the graduation speaker at Smith College in Western Mass, in Northampton, where I grew up. And I didn't go, but a lot of the people I know there were quite taken with the speech. She's a very good speaker. There's absolutely no question about it. All right, that's it for today's bonus show. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.